Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
We're taking a look, though, at the eco data that just crossed, right? ISM Manufacturing had come in week earlier in the week. U.S. services sector expanding at a modest pace for the second month in August. ISM Services a little changed, about 51.5. Now, remember, readings above 50 still indicate expansion. So we want to get right to the guy behind the data. Steve Miller is chair of the ISM Services PMI. Hey, Steve, what do you make of the data today?
Well, we're encouraged to see the second month in a row of growth, and it's the 6th month out of the year that we've seen growth. So definitely encouraged. One of the things that was one of the sub-indexes that was a bit of a surprise was backlog dropping significantly down to about 43%. And what we attribute that to is a lot of the commentary has been around improving supply chain performance and utilizing capacity to catch up. So we attribute that to maybe catching up on late orders that were impacted during supply chain disruptions earlier in the year.
So give us a sense of what this means, do you think, for the Federal Reserve? How do you think the Federal Reserve will look at an ISM index that's still showing some positive growth there at 51.5?
Yeah, I think it's very consistent with going forward with the rate cuts. It's the lowest rate of increase that we've had historically. There were only three readings last year that were lower than this month's reading. And then going back to 2022, only December's reading was lower than this. So we're seeing growth, which is positive, but all the indicators in the data are showing very slow growth. And some of the indicators as far as costs and costs continuing to impact, as well as interest rates continuing to impact investment. Seems like now's the right time.
All right, Steve, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for that instant analysis, Steve Miller, the ISM Chair for Services.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney, we are live here at the Bloomberg conference here in New York. It is called the Power Players, talking about the convergence of sport, business, entertainment, technology, all that kind of stuff, all coming together. And so they've got a great lineup of folks here today talking about that. And we're going to interview a handful of some really smart people coming up over the next couple hours that are going to be participating in this conference. We'll talk about that coming up. But it talks about the big business of sports. And the most recent news is private equity is now going to be allowed to invest in part in the NFL. So you think about I
hear this is a big deal.
This is a big deal because the private equity's got tremendous amounts of capital, and the NFL valuations have been just going so high that individuals anymore almost are priced out of the market. That the old when families used to own these NFL franchises, that's becoming less and less of an instance. You need big institutional capital, and that's kind of one of the stories that they'll be talking about today.
And alternative investments,
Exactly.
I go right to where I want to talk about, is definitely the thing, right? As you have more money and it needs to find more opportunities. And luckily, the Bloomberg Big Take today sort of helps set all of this up for us. Randal Williams is one of the authors on it. And the title is The Billionaire NFL Family Eyes Windfall from Wall Street and the Swifties. And this really focuses on Dan and Clark Hunt controlling a $6.5 billion empire with a portfolio of teams across the nation, from the NFL, Major League Soccer, and the National Basketball Association. I read it. I read the sports, and it was a great read. I learned a lot, actually. Randal Williams joins us here at Bloomberg headquarters. Hey, Randal, walk me through what you learned about this family and how it runs itself and sort of all the different branches they have in sports.
Yeah, you said it, or you mapped it out. Oh, there go my glasses.
It happens.
But yes, you mapped it out. They have a majority ownership of the Chiefs, of FC Dallas, and then an 11% stake in the Bulls. So they are one of the premier sports families across the country, and I'd say across the world too.
What are their ambitions here for just sports in general going forward? As you mentioned, they have diversified ownership. Obviously, their biggest asset is the Chiefs, which they've owned forever, it seems like. Where do they want to grow going forward?
Well, it's all in sports.
Yep.
I mean, one of the things that Clark and Dan Hunt have talked about is the opportunity to grow in soccer. I mean, the World Cup will be here in 2026, the Olympics in 2028. That's a tremendous opportunity to grow soccer domestically. Anyone who knows, and I should say football, but, you know.
I know, this is going to get confusing, right? Because, like, soccer, you play with your feet, so
right.
It should be football.
I'll say soccer to stay American. But anyone who knows soccer knows that it is the giant internationally. It isn't here the same way domestically. The World Cup provides an opportunity for that. At the same time, the NFL has an opportunity internationally because that's the giant domestically. So the NFL is trying to play more games internationally. They're trying to grow their business internationally. So those are the two opportunities that both of them see, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of managing it.
I have an actual, like, legitimate but silly question.
Sure.
How do they deal with the name problem? The soccer versus football versus actual football, like, especially if they try and grow abroad for the NFL.
Well, I think that when you go abroad, you adjust, and it's a question for the commissioners and how they want to market it.
Okay. Do we know what the answer is that going to be?
I think football is going to stay football.
It's going to stay. Okay.
And, you know, there'll be a budding rivalry between the two, a quiet one. But as long as everybody's making money, then, you know, it keeps everybody happy.
Fair enough.
All right, so talk to us about private equity. That was kind of, for me, being a Wall Street guy, the big news in sport over the past couple of weeks. And Clark Hunt himself led the committee within the NFL to kind of address this issue. What is their thinking about private equity? Why did they go down that road?
Well, I heard you talking about this a little earlier, but the reality is if you're selling a 5 to 10% stake in a franchise that's worth $6 billion, that's $300 million or $600 million in cash, and the valuations are only going higher.
Yep.
How many people can write a $300 to $6 million check, even if it's discounted? Let's say you take $50 million off. That's still a lot of money. Even the richest athletes in the world don't have $200 million in cash to just send to a team. And this is a long-term investment. You're not getting that money back tomorrow. You have to be in this for the long run. And so with that, if you're selling to an individual, that individual isn't going to come in and just want to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, yeah, I have a piece of a team. No, they might want to ride on the team plane. They might want an ownership suite. These owners, and a lot across sports, period, have inherited these teams over time. They are very, very, very close and prized possessions. That means that they don't want to let an individual who they may not know in. Private equity is a solution to that. They want returns on their investment. They're not going to look to be riding on a team plane, maybe
they have their own planes.
Exactly. Exactly. So they'll be willing to be quiet investors is what I'd call them. And so it's a solution. But the most important detail that I think I'll be saying for years to come is that both Jerry Jones and Clark Hunt said that this was a positive day, not a happy one. It's not something that the owners want to do. Quite frankly, I think if they were making more money, that doesn't mean that they're not making money. But if they were making more money, they wouldn't be allowing this. But these are providing solutions to secession issues, to stadium deals, to giving liquidity to owners who might not have the cash that they want. So that's setting the landscape for private equity.
And I noticed that, the Hunts, they had a defeat recently in that they weren't able to get, I guess, the municipalities surrounding their stadium in Kansas City to help them renovate the stadium, or maybe even a new stadium. What's the future there? Because a lot of people look at the Kansas City as maybe over the last 5 years the most successful franchise in the NFL, and our people tell you the stadium's terrible.
Yeah.
relative to the new stadiums being built that are just
It's
amazing.
an older stadium. I'd say that. I think that there's a nostalgia feeling around older stadiums. However, there's a reason they're looking for this money to renovate, because it needs renovation. So what's going to happen next? They've tried at the local level. I think they'll go to the state. But they've also opened a door to going across state lines to the state of Kansas. So all options are on the table. Do they want to leave Arrowhead Stadium? No, absolutely not. Clark will tell you that. The team president, Mark, will tell you that. They don't want to leave Kansas City. But the reality is this is a business, and this is a money-making business. If it's going to cost them more money to stay in Kansas City as opposed to going to Kansas where they might be able to build a stadium, they're going to do that.
Okay, talk to me about today. Power Players.
The fun day.
Okay.
Party day.
It's a party day for you, and I get to learn about sports. So together, we are united. What panels are you going to be moderating? What are you excited about?
I'm on 2 college sports panels. We have Deja Kelly, Brittney Whiteside, Tim Pernetti, all prominent people in college sports who are in the business of it. We also have Open Door CEO Blake Lawrence. They'll be speaking at Blake Lawrence and Brittney Whiteside will be speaking at a lunch panel, and then Deja Kelly, Tim Pernetti, and again, Brittney will be speaking on another college sports panel. So those are my 2 today.
Tim Pernetti, formerly of Rutgers, great name, and the Big East. The big thing in college sports is I think it's the Wild West here in terms of the dollars going around. NIL, name, image, and likeness.
Correct.
You got $20 million rosters out there, and it's only going to go higher. Somebody's got to step in and regulate this thing. Who's going to do it?
Who knows?
It can't be the
Who knows?
NCAA.
We'll find out today.
All right.
We'll find out today. I mean, listen, if there was an easy solution to this, I think we'd have it by now. The NCAA is going back and forth to the Supreme Court, it feels like, every other week on what it can regulate and what it can't regulate. What that means for the athletes, it's a great time.
Yeah.
It's a great time. You can get money just about everywhere legally. I mean, there's some infractions here and there, but if you want to go into sports as a college athlete right now, the reality is you can go to Rutgers, get $100,000, you can go to Texas, get $500,000, and then you can go to Florida and get $1.5 million and never touch the NFL
Yep.
Can you
or
imagine
the
being
NBA.
19 and having that? I mean, like, no way would I know what to do
I'm
with
going back
that.
to school.
Yes.
I'm going back to school.
I'm
I need
definitely
another
built for
degree.
sports.
Lace them up.
Me
Very
and
good.
soccer. And we'll talk to Brittney Whiteside actually just right after this break. So
great.
Great.
Stuff. Thank you so much, Randal. Really appreciate it. Good luck today. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Looking forward to
Thank
the rest
you.
of the panel. Randal
This was
Williams from Bloomberg.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Alex Steele here alongside Paul Sweeney. We are live at the Bloomberg Power Players at Bloomberg Global Headquarters right here in New York. The summit's bringing together industry leaders at the intersection of sports, business, and technology, a.k.a. this is the day where Alex learns more things about sports, which I think everyone will be very helpful to hear about. Joining us now is Brittney Whiteside. She is Vice President at Altius Sports Partners, and she has a long career in this area. Before this, she was a trustee at Whiteside, served as an executive associate athletes director at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. She was also a member of the department's executive leadership team and has been deeply involved in college sports for quite a long time. Brittney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this is where you get to dumb stuff down for me. So college sports, I know, is definitely changing.
Yes.
How is it changing and how quickly is it changing?
You know, it is changing rapidly. Probably in the last 3 years, we've seen some of the most change in college sports, but also in the industry at large. We have the implementation of NIL. I'm sure you've heard of that. That's a buzzword, right? Now athletes can earn money off of their name, image, and likeness. And so when you talk about college athletics and change, and you think about that in the last year, in the last 3 years, that's the biggest change. And now we're at a point where we continue to see the change. And you have the House settlement where schools may be able to now pay athletes directly. And so as you think about college athletics and the business model, it is completely shifted, and leaders across the country are preparing for that.
All right. To me, it's all about the economics. And I think most people agree that given the money behind big-time college sports, that, in fact, the athletes should be compensated for that.
Yeah.
The question is NIL the way? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like rudimentary at best. There's no regulation. There's no way to ensure an even playing field. Where do we go from here? It seems like we open a Pandora's box and we have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. It is the right thing for athletes to be able to earn money off of their name, image, and likeness, so be able to monetize that, right? NIL was the first step in that, the ability for athletes to go out and to earn income, whether that is through working with brands or in some spaces, you probably heard of collectives in this space as well, you know, helping athletes generate money off their name, image, and likeness. Where do we go from here? You know, we have the pending House settlement, which as we sit today, the judge will hear arguments against the fairness of that House settlement, right? House settlement is really the next step in the framework for college athletes and athletic departments to be able to share in that revenue, right? It's a revenue sharing proposal. And so in terms of next steps right now, it is the pending House settlement and next steps for athletes to be able to be paid directly from institutions versus brands and collectives and all of the other areas. And then there will be some upcoming regulation to that as well.
Right.
What about, I mean, that this is tied to a college or university is also just so odd. Like this is like a professional business that one can be a part of, but yet you're going to be 19 years old also expecting to like go get your GPA and do well in school. How does all of this going to coexist?
You know, it has coexisted now for a while, and, you know, that was a major concern of mine early on, is how are college students going to be able to navigate this? And what we've seen is they've been able to handle it well. Some of them engage in the NIL space and do so in a way, in meaningful ways, where they're getting internships and opportunities and skill sets that they did not have the opportunity to get before. So when you think about NIL, you think about managing your brand. You think about negotiating. All of those skills are skills that you need for life. And so as part of being a student, part of that is preparing for life after, your time on campus for 4 or 5 years. And so NIL in many ways has been handled for students as a great opportunity for them to leverage their brand and be able to generate money and help prepare them for a future.
I guess the other big issue in college athletics has been the realignment of conferences, and now we've got my poor, Rutgers field hockey team sleeping on the floor of Newark Airport because they're taking a flight out to Stanford.
Yeah.
Stanford in Palo Alto. What's going on there? How is this going to evolve, do you think?
Wait, why is that bad? Why is that weird?
Because now Stanford on the West Coast is now part of the ACC part of the ACC.
I gotcha.
So they got to go fly from Palo Alto to Durham, North Carolina.
I get it.
And I can understand that for the football team. They're on a charter jet, all kind of same thing for basketball. But how about for the smaller sports? How is this impacting?
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic when you think about some of the Olympic sports, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about what are some of the things that we still need to figure out. In college sports, I think that's part of it. Conference realignment as a whole, mostly driven by football schools that are competing at the highest level with schools that want to compete at the highest level. With that comes other Olympic sports that it may not make as much sense economically for them to travel or for student athlete experience for them to travel. But when schools and institutions want to compete at the highest level, that is part of it. And so right now, many schools are having those conversations on where do we want to be in this landscape? Do we want to compete at the highest level? And if we do, that may come with your field hockey team traveling across the country to compete against the best in the country.
But then they still have to go take a test and do grades. I mean, that's something.
You have Wi-Fi now. They're taking
I guess
exams
that's true.
remotely.
Okay. Fair enough. What do you think that athletes could be doing better though right now?
Oh, it's such a key time for athletes to hone in on who they are, their identity, how they can manage themselves.
Because we all knew that at
brand.
19.
Right? I know, right?
Yeah.
But also they are also engaging responsibly and thinking about what are some of the brands that I work with on or a coffee shop that I always go to, a local coffee shop. How can I utilize my NIL with that local coffee shop to create a partnership, right? And so, that's how athletes are navigating it now. They're navigating at the local level, and then also they have schools that are putting resources together to help educate them on how to really navigate it in a way that is best for them.
What do you advise schools to do as they think about how to really implement an NIL and take care of their student athletes? What are you recommending as a kind of an overarching view?
Yeah, absolutely. It always starts with education. And so early on, it's educating the athletes on what NIL is, what it isn't, how to build their brand, how social media plays into this, how this entire ecosystem works. The second part of that is as a department to really hone in on your strategy. How are you going to invest in the resources for your athletes to be successful in this space? Like you would in strength and conditioning, like you would in nutrition. This is another part of the student and athlete experience that as an institution, it's your responsibility to invest in resources so athletes can really optimize their NIL while they're on their campus. And for some of the athletes, this is their time to earn
their prime
income.
time.
This is their prime time. Some are competing at a national level on TV. And so as an institution, it's how can we utilize our network, our resources, our institution IP to help athletes generate revenue and generate income for themselves?
Well, because that's why we see a lot of former pro athletes now investing because they were able to take control of their money, and they have so many stories. Like when we talked to A-Rod a few months ago, they have so many stories of their peers that were given all this money in a really short amount of time, and your earning power is so limited when you're so young, and then it's gone. It's not a sustainable business model like Paul and I might have. What do you think that the media rights world, as we change from traditional TV to streaming, all of that, how is that impacting college sports?
I think it will continue to evolve, and that's happening in college sports at the conference level as the conferences really hold the media rights to those sports in that entertainment space, right? And so I think it will continue to evolve. I think it's going to continue to be a big money area in college athletics is the media rights. And I think it's to be determined on what the future structure of FBS football looks like and in college basketball and those other things that really may take form as some of these media contracts are coming up for renegotiation in the coming years.
How about we all think about football and basketball driving it. How about the NIL and the money? Is it there for women's sports? Is it there for the Olympic sports as you refer to them? Is it trickling down to the football, basketball thing.
Yeah. Yes, with the institutions we work with, we are seeing it trickle down. Now, not at the same level as football and men's basketball, but we are seeing athletes in Olympic sports, primarily women's sports. We just had a school that announced that they had a women's sports sponsorship that included NIL, right? And so you are seeing more brands. And I also believe that women's sports are doing a really good job of leveraging their personal brands. And they're really figuring that out earlier, right? And it's a time for women's sports right now. Yeah. So there's definitely more attention and support, and that is trickling down to women athletes on campuses as well.
So how does the partnership wind up starting? Like, is it the athlete taking control and going, like you said, the local coffee shop, et cetera, and being like, hey, here's what I got for you? Or is it, someone goes to watch a game and they're like, that athlete's awesome, or like, I like their personality? Like, how does that evolve?
So it is both. So part of it is on the athlete, and athletes that do it well are reaching out to brands.
That's amazing.
Some of them have representation. Some of them have agents that are negotiating partnerships with them. And then you have the school, and you have donors and supporters that have created these businesses, these enterprises called collectives, that if they have a donor that wants to support that athlete or that sport, that donor would give to that collective, and then they would, find opportunities for the athlete to get that money.
And it seems like with the collectives, I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it, I'm reading about it. There's definitely the haves and have-nots.
For sure.
A certain school that I'm familiar with, their collective in their first year just dwarfed everybody else. And it's a handful of phone calls. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
How does that change? How does that shift?
Well, it'll come directly from the university.
Yeah.
So you'll take out the collective as a middleman.
Yeah. There are certain things that may regulate that collective space a little bit more, but right now, as you have the pending House settlement, schools will be able to share in that revenue directly with athletes. So you still will have collectives in this space, right, that will play some role. But long term, it's really to be determined on what that looks like, as there may be more regulation coming in that space.
But you're absolutely right. The change in college sports is just, breathtaking.
Amazing.
So, it just seems like how these universities are going to deal with this.
I knew I should have put my daughter in something meaningful when she was 3. Exactly. Darn it. Hey, Brittney, really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Brittney Whiteside, Vice President of Altius Sports Partners. A really great conversation there.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
We are broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Power Players Conference at Bloomberg Global Headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, bringing together a lot of the smart folks in the business of sports, the technology of sports, and the competitiveness and the economics of sport. I'll tell you what, in the last 3 or 4 years, women's sports, in terms of popularity, audience, ratings, it's just, I'm not going to say exploded, but really had a noticeable surge, in my opinion. Think, for example, Caitlin Clark with the basketball. But I think it all started with women's soccer, the success of the U.S. women's soccer program, a team in the Olympics and the World Cup and all that kind of stuff. And now the National Women's Soccer League. Jessica Berman joins us. She is the commissioner of the National Women's Soccer League. She joins us here at our Bloomberg conference. Jessica, talk to us about the state of the National Women's Soccer League here in the U.S. It seems like it's just growing dramatically. And I know you've got some news about some ownership out on the West Coast, which really caught my attention, being a former analyst covering the Walt Disney Company. But talk to us about the league right now in women's soccer.
In the last 2.5 years, it is true. I think women's sports and the National Women's Soccer League in particular has exploded. We've reached this inflection point where it is no longer a question whether investing in women's sports is a good business investment. And because of that, the money has followed. And we're looking at our ownership group across all of our teams, 14 teams across the country, and we have the right capital and strategic investors around the table to really build for the future. Talk about our recent announcement this morning. Bob Iger and Willow Bay are now the control owners. It is a boom. It is a mic drop. Are now the controlling owners of Angel City, which are the highest enterprise value women's sports team in the world.
Oh, wow.
Traded for $250 million. And, this is a league that launched 12 years ago. Angel City is only 3 years old.
Los Angeles,
If you put that side by side with the men's leagues that have been around for decades, some more than 100 years. It's really incredible to see the amount of growth. We also announced this morning that Magic Johnson is an investor in the Washington Spirit with Michelle Kang. So the type of owners who are coming to the table to really invest in this is really driven by the future vision of a view that we really can be the best league in the world. And because of the backdrop, as you mentioned, of women's soccer, it's just an incredible moment to be part of witnessing this growth.
Well, I was going to ask as to the why now part of it. Is it because you've had, super good success with some amazing players in the game? I also, as a finance nerd, am going to go back to the Fed had 0 interest rates for a really long time. There was a lot of money that needed to be put to work, that needed a good return because you couldn't put it in the bond market, that kind of stuff. What are you hearing as to why people with money think this is a good investment now?
I think if you look on a longitudinal basis, particularly at men's sports as a parallel, over the course of decades, it outperforms every other asset class on a long-term basis. And so you've often seen investors who are long-range in their thinking around putting capital to work invest in sports and see incredible returns. If you look at that compared to the product of women's soccer, there really is no reason why we should not be as successful as men's sports, particularly in a sport that has the backdrop of when you think of success and soccer in the U.S., you actually think of women first. And that really creates a unique value proposition that has really woken up the investment community to say, if we look at men's sports and the way that they've grown in enterprise value on an exponential basis over decades, and we are at the inception of our growth, there's very few things in the world that you can get in at the ground level. I think we're definitely beyond the ground level, but we're certainly nowhere near the top of our hockey stick growth.
Media rights, it's the big driver of global sports valuations globally. What's the media strategy for U.S. Women's the Soccer League?
Yeah, we signed a landmark media deal and announced it in November of 2023. We got a collective $250 million invested into our league from the combination of CBS, ESPN, Amazon, and Scripps Ion. And in addition to that incredible investment in our league, which allow us to put those resources to work to grow the league, we've also made the very important strategic decision to also invest in ourselves and ensure that our games are viewable and discoverable on platforms that are national in scope and scale. And so from last year to this year, we went from 6 games being available on national broadcast to over 120.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So now when you are sitting on your couch, which some people still do, and channel surf, which some people still do, you will find our games. And if you were watching the U.S. Open the other night, which I was, and there was a promo ad to tell everyone that you can watch this weekend on ESPN. If you were watching CBS Mornings this morning, you saw a promo ad that you can watch the NWSL on Saturday on CBS. And so we are in the places and spaces where people consume live content, and that will help us to catalyze the growth of our audience.
So I don't have cable. So what about streaming? How can I find it on my Apple TV?
Yeah, so all of our CBS games are also on Paramount+. All of our ABC and ESPN games are also on ESPN+. All of our games on Scripps Ion, you can also watch through a Pluto TV or other streaming apps that provide access to over-the-air platforms. And obviously, Amazon Prime is basically ubiquitous with national distribution, both streaming and anywhere else that you would want to watch.
Jessica, how about talent here, the players? I mean, you could do a whole league with the University of North Carolina. That's such a great program for so long. And as a Duke person, I hate to admit that. But it's an international game. It's a global game. Can international players come here? Because I know that's a problem for the U.S. men's league. The U.S. players, the great international players, don't want to come to the U.S. league relative to Europe. What's it like in the women's side?
Messi did. There's that.
Well, unless you're at the end of your career and you're looking at cash in.
I think that is, and I appreciate the question because maybe I should have led with that in the answer to why now, why invest in the NWSL. We are the best league in the world.
Yep.
And we are at the top of the pyramid as it relates to attracting talent. And we have a lot of the best players playing here, not just the U.S. Women's National Team, but we look at, for example, the Olympics this summer.
Yep.
where we as a league had 57 players competing for 11 of 12 teams in the Olympics. If you looked at the gold medal match, we had the majority of the players on the pitch, both for Brazil and for the U.S. team. We had 27 players competing between both of those teams. And so we are a global league. We've actually recently changed our rules to allow 9 players on the roster be international players, because we really want to be a league that is a destination for the top talent in the world, which now is not just in the U.S. There are there's top talent everywhere. This truly is a global game, and
it is.
We're excited to be a destination for the best players.
All right, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Jessica Berman, she's a commissioner of the National Women's Soccer League. You talk about the growth of women. Again, in my opinion, kind of led by the Women's Soccer League, and it's just been extraordinary. It continues to grow, and as a media person, when you see the money, the rights start to go to a particular sport, that's where you know that the growth is and the opportunities, and that's certainly the case with the U.S. Women's Soccer League.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
All right, happy Thursday, everybody. I'm Alex Steele alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. We are broadcasting to you live from our headquarters right here in New York City at the Power Players Conference, where we're talking about sports, money, media, business, and the combination between all of those things. And we just spoke to the commissioner of the U.S. Women's Soccer League. That was quite interesting in terms of the big money coming in terms you definitely missed the bottom, there's money already in there, but if you get in now, there's just so much more exponential growth that you could see.
Yeah, and big news coming out of the second biggest market in the country, Los Angeles. Bob Iger, the chairman CEO of Walt Disney Company, and his wife Willow Bay buying a controlling stake, or I think a full stake, a complete stake of the Los Angeles franchise. So that is a huge vote of confidence there.
All right, well, we just talked to the commissioner, so let's talk to someone who actually kicks the ball around.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that's probably a great idea. Joining us now is Midge Purce, forward New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC. She also is United States Women's National Soccer Team. Wow, okay, this is really awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
So, can I ask a really dumb soccer question?
Go.
This seems to me to be the hardest sport to play because everyone is running all the time. It's not like when you're in football and you kind of stay in a range, or tennis, it's a small area. How do you do it?
Well, our coaches make us run a lot in
right?
practice.
All the time?
Yes, all the time. But what I think makes it the hardest sport is that any other athlete who tries to play soccer looks extremely unathletic. Where you can kind of fake it if you're playing football or basketball or even running track, but you look really unathletic playing soccer unless you know it.
I think that's a good point.
Mitch, talk to us. We were talking to your commissioner about the state of the sport and the league and everything. I want to talk to you about what it's like on the field. Talk to us about the competition, the level of competition, where the players come from. What's the level of competition on the field? Now, you played your college soccer at Harvard. What's it like for that jump to the pros?
Oh, the jump is getting bigger and bigger. I think the gap between the collegiate game and the professional game has only grown over the past couple of years. I think when I was coming from college and going to pro, that jump wasn't as big for me. I had a good time my rookie year. But now you see people not struggling more, but really having to take a little bit more time to get to that level and mesh in with the rest of the players.
Do you feel like if I say women's soccer is finally having its moment, is it actually finally having its moment that's durable and here to stay?
I don't know if I can subscribe to that, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, tell me.
It's because every 4 years we have the Olympics and we have the World Cup, and everyone gets really, really excited about women's soccer, and then it usually dissipates at some point. I do think women's sports in general are having an incredible moment. I mean, you can see it with the WNBA. You even see it with rugby and track. I'm with you. I believe in it, but I want to wait to see it before I subscribe.
You've been on the national teams, the U.S. national teams, for years, so you've seen the global competition and how. But the U.S. team is in my opinion, I don't know, I'm not that into it, the best team for a long time globally in terms of looking at the World Cups and so on. Talk to us about the growth of soccer internationally outside the U.S. What are you seeing in terms of competitiveness? Because I know there are a lot of international players in the U.S. League.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think you can see it even with the last World Cup we had. We won this Olympic gold, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think anyone who watched the games could see that they were difficult games. It wasn't 6-0, it wasn't 5-0, it wasn't 3-0. A couple Germany games were in our favor. But in general, it's the competition is leveling out, and the global stage is getting a lot more even. So I think even seeing a lot of those players come over to our league and increase the competitiveness that we have here at home, it's really amazing to see the progression of women's sports globally.
What do you think of the how to monetize that, like as a player? Like we talked to the commissioner, we talked to a partner that sort of helps collegiate athletes monetize themselves and understand how to do that, and works with colleges. Do you think this is all being done the right way?
No.
This is great. This is why I want to talk to someone who actually does the stuff.
In short, no, I don't. I think that we're still behind in terms of the industry approach on how we support players, help players, and promote players. I think one of the biggest issues I've had with women's sports in general is that the landscape for how we market women's sports has always been extremely derivative with the landscape of how we market men's sports. And
that
even
is shocking.
Yeah, they say shrink it and pink it is something that Michelle King likes to say, and I'll take that from her. But it's not even just derivative of the men's game, but we're derivative of the European format as well. And, the American population, this demographic, it's a different audience that you need to cater to. And I think we need to be just a little bit more specific industry-wide with how we do that.
How do you expect the growth of the league to be over the next several years? Do you expect it to get more competitive, maybe more teams? What do the players feel like?
Oh, I don't think anything's going to stop this league, to be completely honest. I think we will be huge competitors with the MLS. I do see a lot more teams coming in. I think more international players will want to come play here, and I think it's going to be even harder to play here domestically.
Right.
What about, do you think we're going to have, competitions, not like the Olympics or whatever, World Cup, where, you can play more internationally and make it not just like a U.S. soccer sport?
Absolutely. I think we already have a CONCACAF tournament happening right now. My team plays tonight. Good luck, Gotham FC.
Okay.
You guys are going to be fantastic. And we have the Club World Cup that's happening. So it's definitely, we are integrating with other leagues and making that global community for women's soccer.
All right, Midge, that's great. Really appreciate getting a few minutes of your time. Midge Purce, forward for the NJNY Gotham Football Club, and also the United States Women's National Soccer Team. She played her collegiate soccer at Harvard. Talking about the growth of this, the Women's Professional League here in the U.S., certainly, as Midge was suggesting, kind of hitting an inflection point, and that's consistent with what we've seen from women's sports just over the last 3 or 4 years. And again, I kind of just go back to the WNBA, which they're playing their season right now. And Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, they're just kind of really taking over the zeitgeist. And so women's sports, big time here. And that's certainly a focus at this conference here.
Yes, sirree.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney. We are live here at the Bloomberg Power Players Conference at the Bloomberg Global Headquarters, 731 Lexington Avenue, 58th Street. Man, we got a lot of smart people running around here. A lot of interesting conversation about the world of global sport. This one you don't want to miss. David Rubenstein joins us here. He is a co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group and owner of the Baltimore Orioles, as well as Cal Ripken Jr., talking about those O's. Baseball Hall of Famer, founder and partner of Ripken Baseball. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here. We got a lot of sports people running around. We've been talking about women's basketball, women's soccer. Let's talk a little bit of Major League Baseball. You guys are up a game in the win column on my Yankees. It's going to be a great last few weeks of the year. David, I want to start with you here. You own the Orioles here. What are you doing? Why are you buying a sports franchise?
Well, in this case, I grew up in Baltimore, and I wanted to give back to Baltimore a bit, and I thought the team could maybe use rejuvenation in some way, and it's part of rebirth of Baltimore. Baltimore is trying to rebuild itself in many ways from some of the struggles it's had. And I thought a new ownership group would probably be helpful. So I did it for that reason. And obviously I hope to make money as well for myself and my investors, but it's more of a philanthropic thing on my part than anything else.
And Alex, he's got a few partners there, including Mr. Bloomberg, who owns this radio program.
Ah, okay.
How about that?
How about that?
How about
Circular forces.
Exactly. All comes back together. Cal, talk to us about the Orioles. Boy, man, I'm a Yankees fan, so I'm looking at them every day. Man, they look good. Tell us about this team.
It's an exciting young team to watch, talent all over the place. We've had little problems with injuries in our pitching staff, but when you have a deeper minor league system, sometimes when somebody gets hurt, it's an opportunity for someone else. So they're playing really well. And it's interesting when many owners come in to buy a team, the thing they have to fix is what's happening on the field. In our particular case, that's the best part about the investment is that Mike Elias has done a really good job of creating an environment, a culture that knows how to win, knows how to play, and he's put talent in the system. So the good part is you just take your hands off of and say, just keep going. And hopefully the luck factor with David will, in the very first year, we'll take that all the way to the World Series.
Can I ask a really dumb question?
Yes.
Why is investing in sports like a good business? And I say that because at some point we're going to reach the top, right? Like there's so much money coming in. How do you know that?
Well, over the last 10 or 15 years, it's been very difficult for somebody to buy a major league professional sport operation and lose money. People have made staggering sums. Now, of course, that tends to attract more money, and as you suggest, at some point there's always a peak. But right now, the interest in sports is so dynamic that the live television, despite your view and my view that live television should focus on interview shows, actually it focuses on live sports. And live sports is what's keeping television alive, really. So if you take a look at the NFL, for example, I think of the 50 most watched television shows last year, 45 of them were NFL games. And now baseball sees a lot of people, has a lot of people watching as well. So there's a view that as the population increases and as other things seem to be less attractive, sports is still very, very attractive. And so the TV contracts are going up. And as a result, for example, the NBA just negotiated $77 billion worth of contracts. It's expected in 2 years that the NFL will top that number. So that's what is driving it. And also it's a global phenomenon. People now are buying sports teams not only in their own country, but everywhere in the world. And so it's really not just a U.S. phenomenon.
So can I have a simple, all you have to do is to look at the health of sports is to look at the salaries of the players.
Yeah.
And I guess I've become one of those players saying, man, I wish I played in this era.
It always goes up. I mean, I'm like everybody else. It's got to top out somewhere, yet it just keeps going higher. Cal, how has the game on the field changed? The kids today that you watch at Camden Yards, still, by the way, I would argue one of the best parks in Major League Baseball, 25 years on. But how's the game changed today versus when you played?
Well, I mean, the analytics have taken over, and all the data and all the information. And I was an analytical player, and I took the data from, but there was no way that I was getting all the sort of data that you can get now. And the trick is, and this is the fun part about learning, the game hasn't changed much because the diamond's the same, the bases are the same, the mound's the same. The game is played the same way. But with all this influx of new data, teams feel that they have an advantage when they extract some of the data and then use that to help them play in the game. But the secret is, how do you give the data to a player to make him a better player? And that's the part that I'm having fun with, is learning what the data affects the philosophy of how you play the game. And that's changed. And positioning on the field, different old philosophies have kind of gone out the window because they've been proven not to be effective. So it's interesting to watch the game from that perspective. But it is all about the data, the numbers. They track everything that moves on that field.
It's amazing. And that's AI, that's big data coming into sports. And Alex, I'm sure you know this, but Cal has he has a little record out there. He played a lot of games in a row. He never took a day off. Okay. Like that is something that just it'll never be broken now.
So
given the way it's
I wish
changed.
I was wearing probes or something that could figure out how I could do that, because I'm asked all the time, how in the world do you play all those games in a row? And I don't know.
Well, I guess my question would be, with the analytics, that's never going to happen again. Not even going to get close.
Well, I think they're predicting now, at least in a medical sort of way, when that you might be inclined to have an injury.
Right.
And so if they start to think that you might have an injury, then they put you on the list a little early, the injury list a little early, and they're looking at the long term as opposed to the short term. But
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.
There's the one thing that's hard to measure is what's inside your heart. I mean, your guts and how you go out about playing the game, how you compete. That's not measurable right now. And I think that's what drove me is, when you're an everyday player, the definition of an everyday player when I played was every day. I had the body type in which to do it. I healed really well, and I could play through pain. And when you find out that you can play through being less than 100%, because I would argue that even if you play 140 games, you're still playing at less than 100%. Maybe the only time you're 100% is the first day of spring training,
right?
And then you end up moving towards the year. So that's the hard part, where that's not measurable.
Yep.
And I like to see players that push through and force themselves to play every game to
I
see,
do too.
to see how they do it.
You don't see that too much anymore. Hey, David, and aside from the Orioles, you've got a day job here, co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group. Perfect time to ask you this question. I know you bought the Orioles as an individual, as part of a partnership.
Right.
Now private equity, the NFL has allowed private equity to come in as part ownership. What do you think about that?
Well, Carlyle is one of the groups that's permitted, so I guess I am happy for it.
Yes.
I think that it was inevitable because the prices of NFL teams have gone up so much that it's very difficult to find somebody by himself or herself who can buy a team any longer. The last team that was sold, the Washington Commanders, went for $6 billion. It's a large amount of money. Very few people can buy that by themselves. So you need to have consortium of people to do this, and private equity is a big pot of capital sitting there. But the deals are ones where you have to be 10%, no involvement in the day-to-day management, and you have to hold for at least 6 years. So NFL is experimenting. We'll see how it goes.
So, Cal, you have had minor league investments, but this is the first time that both of you have had major league investments. How did this come about? Like, how did the partnership come about? How's it going? Walk us through it.
Well, the owner of the team for the last 30 years was the Angelos family. I had talked to them over last summer about a possible sale, and it came to be, but I wanted to have people in the consortium that were more connected to Baltimore and baseball than maybe I was, because I had grown up in Baltimore, but I haven't lived there for a while. So I talked to a number of people in Baltimore, and some of the people who were also connected with the Orioles. And obviously, the first call I made was to Cal Ripken. He said he would like to invest and also help us in other ways, which he's doing. So I think it's worked out quite well, and win-win for Baltimore and for our
And Cal, that was like
team.
a no-brainer for you? Picked up the call, you're like, yep.
Absolutely no-brainer. I felt like I've been an Oriole through and through my whole life. I mean, I grew up in and around the Baltimore area. My dad was in with the Orioles. The first 14 years of my life, he was a minor league manager. And then you have a dream to be a player. You get drafted by the team you want to get drafted by. You play your whole career with that team. So I know that I went off for a little while, and you buy minor league teams, you learn about business in other ways. You put your head down. You don't pay much attention to what's happening at the Orioles. But when David called, it was an opportunity to get back in, to look at it from the inside, looking out. And I'm really surprised that I'm way into it now. I used to think the whole world revolved around baseball, and then you get out and you realize it doesn't. But then now it seems like the world revolves around baseball again.
Of course. And to put it in context for those who don't know the record, Lou Gehrig played in 2,130 consecutive games. People thought that was the unbreakable record. Cal Ripken did 2,632 games over 17 years, not missing one day. And all of us who work day-to-day for a living in non-athletic things, can you imagine going to work 17 years in a row without missing a day?
Exactly. Cal, what do you think the Orioles need to work on over the next couple of years here? Again, I'm looking at the record. The record is great. What do you think they need to work on? Is it minor league? Is it?
No. We have a minor league that's stocked with talent, and you can only, I mean, if you develop 3 shortstops in the minor leagues, you can only play one of them. So many times the talent that you have in the minor leagues is used to trade to get the pieces that you need at the big league level, and the Orioles are in good position for that. They have young players that are going to be superstars, that are already superstars, and maybe the biggest challenge in the future is how do you keep them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no salary cap here, so it's tough to keep the star players, right?
Yes. Unlike football or basketball, there's no salary cap in professional baseball, so you can get contracts that are as high as $700 million. And so it's hard for smaller cities to compete in that domain somewhat.
All right, we'll have to see how that plays out. Really appreciate you two gentlemen stopping by. David Rubenstein, he's a co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group. He's now the owner of the Baltimore Orioles. And Cal Ripken Jr., the Cal Ripken Jr., Baseball Hall of Famer, founder and partner of Ripken Baseball. Appreciate you two gentlemen taking a couple minutes of your time to stop by here at our Bloomberg Sports Power Conference.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney. We are broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Power Players conference here at the Bloomberg Global Headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. Let's switch gears to NASCAR, the business of NASCAR. I have a lot of experience with NASCAR. We took some of those track owners public back in the early 90s, and I got to really understand the business, the sport, and the heritage of NASCAR racing. It's just extraordinary education there. Steve Phelps joins us. He's the president of NASCAR. Steve, thanks so much for joining us here. You know, I got to know NASCAR in the early 90s when I think it was really on an ascendancy in terms of television ratings and attendance, and it was just crazy, and it rode that way for a while. Then it kind of crested. Where are we now with NASCAR in the global sports scene here?
Sure. Well, I think you're exactly right, Paul. So had this, I would say until 2009, the growth of the sport just continued. The recession hit, and I think sponsorship started to go away because not necessarily the sport, just because of where things were with the economy. And then we had a slow, steady decline, if we're going to be completely honest, until 2018. But since 2019, attendance is up, ratings are up. We did almost a $1.1 billion per year media deal last year for 7 years, so almost $8 billion. And so I'm very bullish on where the sport is today, but importantly where it's going.
Where do you think it's going to go? Like, how does it broaden appeal? How do you get someone like me to watch it?
Sure, I think and there's the trick, right? So
and someone like me, I don't do sports at all. I like the Olympics. I like the U.S. Open.
So I think we're trying to appeal to both, obviously, our existing audience and serve that audience, and then bring a new audience in. We're doing that through a number of different things. So, for example, we did a Netflix show earlier in the year, and that audience for us has been more female. It has been younger. And I think if you look overall in NASCAR in the last 3 years, our growth has come from women, people of color, and younger people. And so it's working, but we've got to continue to do that. The key for me is what content opportunities we have that will capture you, Alex, right? And what are the storylines we have that will capture you? And I think that's important because, I think people think of it in a way that is not right, which is you either going to serve your existing fans or you're going to go after new fans. I don't think that's true. It's an and, it's not an or. These fans, the existing fans, they want great racing, they want great storylines, they want their drivers to win, they want to see exciting racing. These people want the same thing. It's how do you capture them, right? And so I don't think the two things are all that different. It's just where are we investing our money? So, for example, we just built a $60 million production facility right outside of Charlotte next to our R&D facility. And it's really two components to it. It's live event production. So how are we going to put our own events on for our 5 media partners going forward in 25? And then how do we create creative content and really compelling content, either to be distributed through our own channels of distribution or someone else's. So, and we've got the 3 new media partners as part of it. So Fox and NBC came back, who are existing partners, but we added Amazon, Warner Brothers Discovery, and the CW. And the CW is for our second series, which is called the Xfinity Series. So 5 media partners, 5 opportunities for us to have kind of a megaphone of where things are going.
It used to be, Alex, Ford cars, Chevy cars in the race. If you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. That's how important it was. Talk to us about the economics of just the teams out there. How many teams are there? Do they make money? How does that work?
So I would look at it in 3 buckets, right? So we have 3 national series. The one that most people think about is our Cup Series, which is our top series. So we are coming to a close, I think, pretty quickly on something called charter extensions. So I would think of it as franchise light.
Okay.
So it's not franchised, but it creates enterprise value for our race teams. And so we are in the final throes of getting those extended. Right now, race teams, if you probably are collectively losing money, So in the charter agreement that we have based on our media deals and some other things that we're doing, we're going to provide the race teams with more revenue. So 2 pieces of revenue, guaranteed revenue, and then what they race for. And so to me, starting in 2025, we should have cash flow positive race teams, which is what we want. And I've heard lots of fans say, well, I don't really care about that. My whole point is
you
should
do when they
care.
go bankrupt, yeah.
Well, that's exactly, well, not only that, but it creates more compelling racing, right? And that's what we want. We have competitive racing. So we have, of our 26 races we've had this year, 15 different winners, 9 different organizations of the 15 charter organizations that we have. So and the racing's terrific. It's the best style of racing, I believe, on the planet. And I think our race fans are telling us that. So, again, ratings are up despite significant rain issues we've had all year long.
Rain, okay, yeah.
So, Daytona 500, we were down 27% because we raced on Monday.
Yep.
Coke 600 rain event down 15%. We had a race in the streets of Chicago. Rain again, down 15%. So, our 3 largest rated events of the year, all down double digit, and yet we're still positive of ratings. So, it's working.
Just real quickly, any new markets? We've got about 30 seconds left.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we are going to race next year for the first time outside of our borders in the Cup Series in Mexico City. Okay. So we have some other discussions that are going on. So we're excited about the broadening of our sport.
Yep, absolutely. I like Charlotte Motor Speedway, like Richmond, and I like Bristol, the smallest track. But it's just people down there are nuts for racing. It's kind of like Bristol, Tennessee, Bristol, Virginia. It's really cool. Anyway, Steve Phelps joins us, president of NASCAR, here at the Bloomberg Sports Conference here in New York City, talking to us about the business of NASCAR racing.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
All right, Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney, we're live here in the 6th floor of the Bloomberg headquarters. We're here for the Bloomberg Power Players here at our headquarters. Let's talk a little hoops here. Team USA basketball. I'm going to introduce my second favorite Duke player of all time, Grant Hill. Just phenomenal. Of course, Bobby Hurley, his point guard back in the day, is my number 1 choice from Jersey City. Grant, thanks so much for joining us here. Team USA. I mean, you guys are hitting it. I mean, talk to us about the status of Team USA. I mean, obviously Coach K stepped back. A new regime kind of came in. You're there. Talk just about Team USA. Both men and women are just wow.
Well, first of all, Bobby Hurley was my favorite player of all time because he passed the ball to me. You know? And so, no, Bobby was great. It's an exciting time. And obviously I succeeded Jerry Colangelo, who, along with Coach K, had an incredible run together starting in 2006. And I came in during this sort of Olympic quad. We had our World Cup last summer. We didn't fare as well in the World Cup. The women won the gold medal in their World Cup. But the Olympics were absolutely incredible. And both teams were pushed. They were tested. There was just excellence on the court all over the world. We saw Serbia in our semifinal games. They were so worthy and deserving of winning, came up short.
Yeah, I saw that one.
You saw that one?
Yeah, I did. See? Okay.
But it was just phenomenal. I mean, the fact that we got tested, we got pushed, we had to show some fight and some toughness collectively to win that game, but also win the gold medal against France. The women's team got pushed, and a very close, tough matchup they had in the gold medal game with France as well. So I think it was just a win-win, not just for USA basketball and our continued excellence. It was a win-win for basketball universally. Like, I think all across the globe, if you're a fan of the game, the Olympic basketball scene was spectacular.
And even if you don't know the game or watch the game normally, like, I was totally into it.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was really great. Talk to me about investing. And where do you see opportunities? I know that you and your wife are also investors in the Orlando Pro women's soccer team, and we were talking about that over the last couple hours as well, as to where the opportunity set is, sort of where women's soccer is going to go.
Look, so I have 2 daughters who are jocks, who are athletes, and so yes, and I think sort of through them, really getting exposed to women's sports and really wanting them to see women professional athletes. So whether it was the WNBA or the NWSL, we live in Orlando, we were fans and consumers at first. And we got so caught into it and just loving it and having a passion for these teams. We also saw the potential and the upside for growth. And so the opportunity to invest in the NWSL, the Orlando Pride, we're in first place right now. Yay. We haven't not lost a game. We've had a few ties and all wins. But I just feel the momentum is really growing. And now you have superior leadership. Jessica Berman is a fantastic commissioner, has great vision, can execute that vision, has surrounded herself with a solid team. But also we have professional ownership now. We have owners now who own other sports, who've been in this, who understand it, see the long-term trajectory of the business. And so I wouldn't say we're at an inflection point right now, but I think we have long-term positioned ourselves nicely for great success. And I think of all the sports leagues, I really believe this. I think the NWSL has the greatest upside. And so really excited. I was excited to see Jessica and Midge Purce, one of the stars in the league.
We talked to her too.
And we're thrilled to be involved.
Where do you see basketball as a global sport? We saw it on at Paris. I mean, the Olympics all over, great competitiveness. How does the NBA, how do you think the NBA taps into that? I mean, there's so many international players playing in the NBA now, but what do you think they should be doing here?
Well, the game has become a global sport. You think of the 92 Dream Team and sort of what they did. They inspired a world, multiple generations of basketball players. Now the NBA is 30% international.
Wow.
And, I can go all over the world and people recognize me and they identify me with the NBA brand.
Yep.
The NBA is a global marketing and public relations firm. The players, they may come in, they may leave, they may, replenishes itself, but the ability to market and promote is what they've mastered and done a great job of that in the last 32 years since the Dream Team. I think, though, where we can continue to improve, obviously domestically with our development. I think the international basketball community has kind of caught us or maybe even surpassed us in some ways with how they develop young talent. I also see expansion, not just here in possibly Las Vegas or Seattle, but I talk about going over to Europe, talk about partnering with the Euro League. I'm an investor in NBA Africa.
Okay.
And the opportunity there and the potential as a lot of the nations on that continent are still developing, but they consume the game. And so the league is doing a number of efforts, a number of initiatives, and just sees the continued sort of growth opportunities that they're global media markets. And the game is in a good place, and I think has even greater potential as we move forward.
10 seconds. How good is this Cooper Flagg kid coming into Duke?
He's really good. I brought him in on the select team to prepare us for the Olympic team, and he played very well. Had a really good day. He might have been one of the top 5 players. I might embellish a bit, but he might have been one of the top 5 players on the court that one day. And so big expectations for my Blue Devils this year with Cooper Flagg.
Exactly right. All right, Grant, thanks so much for joining us. Grant Hill is a managing director of USA Basketball. He's a co-owner of the Atlanta Hawks live from the Bloomberg Power Players. He's here at our Bloomberg Global Headquarters along with a lot of other sports folks. So it's business, it's technology, it's sport, it's entertainment. It's all intersecting.
I'm so impressed with your ability to have this muscle here. That was it. That wraps it up for us.
This is the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.